Hey folks, so we've done a lot of hard work the past couple of months. So this week I wanted to draw something fun, something that's kind of putting some of the things we've learned early in January into practice. So grab your pencils, you don't need your ruler this time, and let's get started. Okay, so there's a few different ways you can start this drawing, but for me I decided to start with the cap itself. I think it's the cap or the bonnet. I don't know, I should brush up on my mushroom terminology. So what I'm starting to do is think about the curve of the top of the cap. So trying to get the angle, trying to make sure it's tall enough because it is surprisingly tall. And then when I get to the top, my curve suddenly takes a change. So I'm trying to make sure I'm getting that angle as well. So at any point, you can alter your line. This isn't like a definite, this is my line, this is where it needs to be. You're going to play around with it and you're going to change things and you're going to notice things as you draw. So once we have done the top of the cap, we then are going to move around to basically draw that outline of the black part. Now, I'm looking at my drawing here and I'm like, it's a little bit skinny, but that will change. So keep refining and keep working on your mushroom. Now, at this stage is just trying to basically differentiate between light and dark. So you just see that edge around there, and I'm just softening the curve on the top. It was a little bit too steep, and I'm much happier with that. Now, once we've done that, we're going to start to put our stem in there. So think about the negative space. Think about, where is the stem in my mushroom? Is it in the center? Is it to the left or to the right? And I notice my stem is more to the left. So I'm looking at that negative space in the black of the mushroom to see how big that should be. And that really helps for getting your stem in the right place. So make any amendments that you need at this point. I need to make mine a little bit fatter, and I'm just going to refine the edge up inside the mushroom as well. So trying to get that little jaggedy bit right in the corner, and then we're ready to start shading. So what you want to do for the shading is we want to hit the dark shades first. This is going to help our drawing to start to have depth. It's really important when we have something like this that has a lot of light and a lot of shadow to make sure we're stretching our shades as much as possible. So let's start off with the dark shade. Now just notice that underneath the cap, the umbrella, I think, is not actually black, and it's not all black. There's a little bit of black in there, but it's a tiny bit lighter than black in most of it. And even in some areas, there's some flashes of mid-grey. Now, because there is a lot of detail in the mushroom, we do get to decide what information we keep and what information we get rid of. So for me, I decided to just kind of put most of the black area fairly dark, because most of my detail is going to be on top and on the stem of the mushroom itself. So feel free to copy mine and get those dark shades and kind of skip that detail underneath the cap. Or if you want to really challenge yourself, you can always try and put that detail in as well. What I'd recommend if you do that is is you add a lighter base and then you add a darker line drawing, or you shade darker around the light bits just to make the texture pop out. And we will do a little bit of this actually up into the top of the mushroom, but for now let's get that cap underneath the cap nice and dark, and we'll start shading in on top. So we're going to switch to our 2B now, and this is going to start to create the shadow that's being cast onto the mushroom. So this is quite a delicate shadow. It doesn't have a hard edge, but it is relatively dark. So you can kind of ease yourself into this one. You can get your 2B and just play around with the shape, trying to get it in the right place and trying to get the gradient nice and soft. So pop that in there and just try to figure out where the shadow starts and where it stops. When we get onto the lighter shading, so that's right underneath it, I want to press really lightly. Now, the shadow that I was just playing with before isn't quite dark enough, so I know I need to push that later on, but for now it's a bit of a rehearsal stage, trying to play around with my shadows, get them really soft and just keep popping them in the areas that they should be. So The slightly more challenging part is the cap. I think I was kind of avoiding this for a decent amount of time just because it has all that grainy texture on there. And there's a lot of stripes, I guess, like gill type things, even though it's the outside. I know any mushroom lovers will know that as well. um, but I want to start by thinking about the underneath tone. So, first of all, is there any white? And the answer is probably no, but I can leave some areas extremely light. And all I want to do is start to get that curvature. So I'll put a base shade down and I'll start to think about getting that nice and round. And the way to do that is through gradients. So we're getting better at gradients, and this is a great way to start to apply that. So my shading is darker on the edge, lighter in the middle, and the top, you can see on the top right there, is much lighter, and then it's a little bit darker on the right hand side. So I first just want to get rid of all that white on the paper and start building up that tone very gently, very easily. So what you want to do now that you've got your base layer of shade on the cap, is you want to start to build up the darker tone. So this is where it starts to look 3D. This is where you start to see the curve, and we're applying this by using gradients. So just along the bottom where my pencil is there, you'll notice that this is much darker, but it's not a hard line. It's a really soft line between underneath where it bends and folds over and from the top of the cap itself. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to just look at the form, look at the shading, and seeing where it's lighter, where it's darker. Now, if you wanted to, you could download the picture and turn it into black and white, and it'll be much easier for you to see where it's dark and where it's light. But, you know, often we do like to draw from nature, and we do like to draw from real life, and it's good practice looking at color, looking at real life, and seeing where is it dark and where is it light. I feel like I'm saying those two words all the time. It's like like a catchphrase. Where's it dark? Where's it light? I was about to go into a rep. No, Jonah. Okay, fab. So once you have started on the base, work on the outside. Now, if you're ever confused about where it should go darker, where it should go lighter, there it is again. I need to find another word for that. Just look at what I'm doing. Look at where I'm putting my pencil. See what shade I'm doing. See how I make it curve. See how I push the gradient. So keep looking at what I'm doing to be able to draw your own, and keep looking at your picture and think, okay, is it soft enough? Is it dark enough? Is the shape right? It's all about refinement and just pushing things, pulling things, tweaking it, making it softer. And very soon your drawing will become very, very 3D. But just make sure the edges are super nice and soft. We can't see any harsh edges. So we want to start adding a little bit of detail, and it's not something that I'm looking at the picture and saying, right, where is this line exactly? It needs to be 100% in the right place. I'm actually taking like an average texture, I guess, and putting it on there. So there's lots of stripes on the top. It is important, however, to think about where are the gaps the darkest, where the lines are darkest, how big are the gaps between the lines, and that's gonna be enough to kind of continue with the principles of nature and perspective. So I'm working my way around and I'm thinking, where does my line curve? If it's beyond halfway of this dome, then it starts to curve to the left. If it's beyond halfway of the dome on the right, then it starts to curve to the right. So I'm really starting to show the shape of this this texture and the curvature of the dome just by thinking about the lines. And right at the bottom where the cap curls underneath, that's a really short, sharp turn. It's not a long, elongated curve like the ones on the top of it. It's a short bend. So it's really important to kind of think of those principles. But other than that, you could just kind of wing the lines. You could do some short ones, some lines that go all the way up to the top, some that kind of stop halfway. So playing with texture, playing with gaps, and also the darkness of the line will start to help your texture become more 3D. So if I stop my drawing here, I'm sure it will be fine. But I like to push things even further. So I've got my detail, I've got some like mid-grays, I've got some dark ones, but on the top of the cap is not looking super 3D, and also on the stem as well. So what I want to do is switch to my 8B and start pushing those darker tones. within the darker tones, there is texture as well. So I am paying a bit more attention to where the lines are going, how thick they are, and how dark they are. And this is a difference between an alright drawing and a very good one. So you want to work your way around now, thinking, where can I push it darker? What about the stem? Does that have any dark edges? Is there any texture in there that I can push forward? What about the edges of the cap? Do they need to be a little bit darker to show the curvature? Things like this are going to be really helpful for your drawing to become 3D, to look like the shadows are really being cast from each other onto the other surfaces. And it's going to make your drawing look fan-bloody-tastic. I really like drawing mushrooms. I do get a little bit put off sometimes because I'm like, oh my god, there's so much texture. But actually, it's quite a good challenge, and being able to decide what you keep and what you get rid of is, I hate to say empowering, but that's the only word that I have. So it's a really fun way to test your skills as an artist and to just become a little bit better at making decisions and a bit more confident. So I'm really hoping that you're feeling that too. And we're nearly there, actually. When you've done your stripey bit, I want you to play around with the dots. Now, don't just throw loads of dots in as if you're, a 3-year-old and you're just jabbing a pencil at the paper. I want you to think about just the collection, like what sort of general shape is it? Is the texture a little bit more dense? Are the dots a little bit more sparse? So just adding a few of these and pushing some really dark is a great way to add another dimension to your artwork. So in your final minute or so, or well, for me it's a final minute, I'm just going over everything with a sharp pencil. I'm trying to define some more of those stripes. I'm looking at my dots and thinking, are they textured enough? Are they standing out enough? And I'm re-looking at that tone to make sure it's nice and dark. So there we go, our first proper drawing. Now, for me, this was really fun, and I hope it is for you as well. Don't forget to share your artwork with a group, or if you're on YouTube, share the video with people. That will be fab. Remember, you can sign up to Patreon for exclusive content, and if you're on YouTube, do all that stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Subscribe, like, comment. All right, folks, I'll see you next week for the next lesson.